Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast on online dating. Ryan, Jackie, Jourie, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for
No,
having
thank you.
us.
Thank you,
Having us.
Brian. Thank you, Brian, for joining my podcast.
Ryan, I know you're joking around here. So Ryan and I, let's just kind of set the table for everyone listening. And so Ryan McGuire, that's on, host of the Pursuit of Happiness podcast. Ryan, how many episodes are you in now?
Ooh, 127 will be posted any day now. So
Awesome job,
we're in the
man.
late 120s. Yeah.
Congrats. Nice.
Thank you.
So Ryan and I have been friends for a lot of years. We've actually done a couple online dating podcasts in the past, back in like 2020, 2021. And we thought, he's now got married up and, a few of us here are still single and still trying to find the one. And, we're kind of going through these dating apps. So we thought it'd be fun to get back together, talk about the landscape of online dating in 2023 and kind of getting folks kind of moving in the right direction to have some success on there. So what we're going to do here, this is going to kind of be a random panel. We'll kind of go back and forth and jump through various stuff. So I want to kick off with everyone kind of going through maybe a quick 15, 20 second of age, what you're doing on the app in terms of the people you're going after, like age of them is probably enough. And then what apps you've been on. And I think that might give some context from everyone listening in. Okay. So Jackie, why don't you start?
Yeah. So thank you again for having me on this panel. I'm so excited. My name's Jackie Sanders. I am 30 years old. I have been on Bumble and Hinge, but mainly on Hinge. And then typically if I'm filtering with age, I have it as 28 to 35, 36.
Okay, perfect. And
Yeah.
Jourie, how about yourself?
My name is Jourie Palumbo. Thanks for having me as well. Excited to be here. So I'm 34 years old and let's see, age range, it can fluctuate, but I think typically I stick around like 28 to 38, like a 10-year span. But every once in a while, if I run out of folks, I'll just extend that a little wider and see what comes through.
Lowers the standards.
Yeah. Desperate times every once in a while.
And I want to get back to all that. Ryan, now I know you're married, so we'll say that again. Beautiful bride you have that you met on Match. Remind me, when you were back doing the dating apps, what age were you kind of going at? What was your selection criteria?
Oh, I learned. Brian, yes. Thanks for mentioning that I am married, but I definitely had my years of frustration of online dating and the apps. I have not forgotten any of that. Trust me. I had learned, I don't know, it goes back and forth. I was late 20s, early 30s, because I still really want a family. And I know that later you get in the 30s, a lot of women were kind of like, perhaps did not want a family, perhaps already had a family, not something I was looking for. But then a lot of times I was doing the late 20s and I noticed that women were restarting their careers, going back to school, and dating was not really a priority. So my sweet spot, I found, became about the early 30s, where women were mature enough, they knew what they were looking for, they were kind of settled in their career. So that was kind of my sweet spot.
Okay. And I guess if you're listening to this on Ryan's podcast, I'm Brian Ondrako. So I'm currently 40 years old. And after I got divorced, I decided to do some online dating and did it for, I did it a little bit in 2020, then stopped, and then started back up in early 2023. And I guess my age gap, probably maybe similar, is like I was aging between about maybe 8 to 10 years younger, starting at, and then going up to basically like, I think 42 was the age. So I had like maybe a 10-year gap in there, which seems like it's kind of the same throughout with everyone on here. But similar to Ryan, now I have a son. So I was in that unique position of, if I met someone that already had kids, didn't want to have kids, I was fine. If I met someone that didn't have kids and wanted to have kids, I was fine. So there was a little more different than when Ryan was in, the position he was in, where I can kind of work through it and have a little more open season, I guess. I don't know a better way to say that, but like I was able to kind of have more options, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear how things quote unquote change. I'm sure they haven't changed that much, but I think all of you have said you've been on Hinge, which is something that I was on, but it wasn't. Bumble was the really popular one 2 or 3, 4 years ago. It was Bumble. Brian, when we had done our episode a few years back about online dating and me helping you set up your profile, that was based on you doing Match. And so the only reason I didn't Match again was because of you, which is how I found Kristen. And I don't think any of you are doing Match now. So we do have some past experience. Does anybody even do Match anymore? I mean, I don't even see the commercials anymore. I used to see commercials all the time. Now I don't see commercials for that anymore. So it's like, is Hinge the hot one? And is it still kind of Bumble a little bit too?
Yeah, from my friends that I know that are on the dating apps, Hinge is definitely the dominant one in my social friend group. But with the caveat of saying I only ever started going on the dating apps in 2021. And so that was for like 2 months and then now on them again recently. So I still feel like I'm fairly new in the dating app experience. I started with Bumble because it felt like an easier entry point in terms of like, at least back then, like less requirements on like what you needed to start off filling your profile. And it was very simple of just like yes or no, versus Hinge when I first started felt very intimidating. You almost like have to fill out all these prompts and you have to start with a message, which that's why I like it now, because you have to put more effort in. But when I started, it almost was like, what is this weird online dating world? I knew friends that were on different apps like Tinder back in 2012 when it was one of like the 4 apps out. And so I was like, oh, this is like dipping my toe into it. But yeah, I don't know of anyone else on Match.
I will say, one of my biggest frustrations that you don't really have to deal with anymore is when I first signed up for Match, probably 10 years ago, after I moved down to North Carolina. I didn't really know anybody, as Brian will admit. A lot of our friends were either married or in relationships, and I just really needed to branch out and meet people. There wasn't apps at the time. It was you logged online and you wrote these long ass emails. And sometimes it would take you like 10, 15, 20 minutes to answer all these questions. And then you'd get ghosted. And you're just like, imagine doing that to 3 or 4 or 5 people. You're writing these emails because you really want to put effort into it. And then they just don't show up, or they wait like 2 weeks to respond. It's like, forget it. The amount of time that you would spend on an actual website, not an app, was brutal. So be happy it switched to apps, because that was bad. That was really bad.
Yeah, that's fair. Jourie, I'm curious what your experience has been in terms of like which apps you prefer being on.
So I guess my rotation has been between Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. I kind of look at them in like a hierarchy almost of like what you're looking for in a way. So for the listeners, I identify as queer and bisexual. So I'm not heterosexual. And so between, I guess the queer scene, I don't know what it looks like kind of in the hetero standpoint, but Tinder is almost like you're looking for a hookup, you're looking for something like quick or just casual, maybe. I mean, sure, there might be people looking for relationships, but I look at Tinder as like, it's casual and maybe a hookup. Bumble's like level 2 for me. Like that could be something short term, maybe a little bit more casual, might be a short term relationship. Maybe some people are looking for relationships. And then I see as Hinge as like, these are long term folks. These are people that might be a little bit like more established in their lives, like a little bit more responsible, I think, maybe trying a little bit harder and like trying to meet people and maybe a more like, I don't know, well, I want to say organic way, but it's not really organic on Hinge. But anyway, it feels like, there's like this level of like casualness to like more seriousness that starts like Tinder to Hinge almost in my experience. And so I've just, based on what I've been looking for, I kind of like rotate through them where I'm like, oh, I'm tired of Tinder, or I'm tired of looking at Bumble. Let me switch to another one. And I'll just kind of go through my rotation.
Real quick, Jourie, do you find the same people are on the different apps? I noticed that, I remember years ago, everybody's on this, everyone's in these pool of apps, right?
Yeah, sometimes for sure. Like in same pictures, and even after like a long period of time of like, oh gosh, I haven't been on Bumble in a while. Let me check back. And it's like, 6 months later and you still see the same folks. Like, oh, well, they're still single. So am I. I don't feel as bad about myself.
That
But
was
that
going
was
to be my question though, because especially with being on multiple apps and like, oh, like I remember this picture, or if you come back to the apps and see similar pictures, I'm curious what everyone's either like tips or strategies or maybe like red flags they see in terms of people's profiles, like what they look for on all the different apps. I know I'm very used to Hinge. They have like a lot of different filters that you can put on. But yeah, I'm curious what people's experience are with that. So Brian, what about you in terms of profiles for dating apps?
Yeah, if we're getting into that, and I think, well, and one, so I've been on Match before, and I've been on Hinge. Match, to Ryan's point, Match is kind of like the old and outdated. It's the eHarmony type. At least in 2020, you think it would have been more advanced, but it was really weird because like just the way they had the profile set and how they filtered through stuff, it was just really the setup was not great. The UI was not great. Hinge is definitely a lot better, and there's definitely more gamification to it to kind of get you engaged and get you on it, which is good, I guess. But I think it's like anything else. People want to be in the room that's crowded and has the most people. As an example, I went on. Have you guys ever heard of Stir? You might have seen some of the ads, maybe not, because you guys don't have kids, but it's like for single parents. And I signed up for that. Well, actually, I helped my buddy sign up for it. And I was like, oh, you should get on this. I'll get on with you. This is before Hinge. And there was like almost no one on there in the area. And I'm like, why? Well, I mean, it's a newer app. They're trying to, get some steam behind it. But like, I think there's so many of these dating apps, and some or most of them kind of fizzle out. And then you have a couple that people attract to. And then all of a sudden, that's how Tinder and Bumble and these others and Hinge get bigger. So just wanted to say that up front. I think going back to the profile, and this is maybe some help of maybe almost what you don't want to do as you go forward. I mean, I think for me, like, Jackie, did you ask what the biggest red flags I see in terms of people that are on, or maybe things to not put on there? Or I guess that's the same question.
I guess either one. Yeah. Like things that you've seen that either have been like, oh, that really stands out in a good way, or very stands out in a, okay, you're getting a no from me today.
I think the biggest thing, I'll be kind of curious, everyone, how they respond to this. But for me, the pictures are a big thing, right? At the end of the day, let's say we're visual, right? We're we want to have some attraction to someone at the beginning stages. A couple things annoy me. One is,
only a couple.
Go off.
Dude, I can't wait to this.
Now we're getting into the good stuff.
I mean, so first and foremost, most every single person I know of our age group has a phone that was created within the last, call it 6 years. Let's just use that. Well, that's a fair statement. I think
that's
6
very
years,
generous.
Right?
Probably
Very
like 4.
Yeah. The phone cameras are amazing. If you have a grainy picture that looks like it was from 1998, that's a huge red flag for me. Like, why is that picture on there? The other thing is, if you have like 5 pictures and they're all with friends, now I have to play Where's Waldo to figure out like which one is you. So that gets frustrating because
it's never the hot one either.
Yeah, people
every time.
It's always the
ugly one.
Well, people
it's catfishing. It's always in the first photo too.
Okay,
you're like, which one is it? It's not the hot one.
So going back, staying on track here, stay with the group. So people have different hairstyles and what have you in certain pictures. So again, you have to kind of play that as well. The other thing too, like I think for me at least, and this is being a parent and kind of being again watchful of this. I've been on a few dates, well, maybe at least, well, definitely one, maybe 2 of they didn't say they had kids, and then you find out they have kids, and they didn't put it in their profile that they have kids. So I'm like, that's kind of weird. So that's a couple. I can keep going down the rabbit hole, but Ryan, let me throw it over to you. What were some of yours when?
I'll go down the rabbit hole. Shit.
Well, we'll keep it going. That's all. I just want to
I will jump down the hole. Yeah, it's funny. I started to write stuff. Like I said, this stuff is still somewhat fresh in my memory. I haven't been married for a year. Yeah, there was a lot of red flags I learned over time. And I wrote them down, Jackie. When you teed up Brian, I was like, I'm going to write a bunch of stuff down. All right. 1, filters. On every photo, you use filters. Two, at least this is for me personally, is if you are drinking and are drunk in like every photo, it's going to make me feel like you have a nightlife. Like this isn't going to work for me. Three, guns and shooting in your photos. Not really for me, not my cup of tea. Four, if it's not really filled out, that makes me like a Jackie. I remember you said about filling out Hinge. That makes me feel like, okay, you're interested. Like you want something to work. You want someone to read this and you're taking the effort to do that. If you don't fill it out, it's like, does this person really even care? All right. So we have five. Five, headshots only their headshots. As you said, Brian, you want to know you're attracted to the person. You like at least see one full body photo. So when you walk in to the bar or coffee shop to meet this person, you're not going to be like, oh, was not expecting that. All right. Another one is not smiling. Either they don't look happy or they just don't show their teeth at all. Teeth are very important to me. So that is very important. Another one, I'll end it on this one as far as like the red flags is, I'm not super religious. And I know a lot of people, especially down here in the Bible Belt, are, and that's fine with me. I'm not going to knock that. I'm actually probably not for them. So I think that's just one of those things where people's religion is very important to them. It's not really for me, so we're probably just not a good match there. And I'll run through a quick couple things here that are really good for me that I remember noticing is someone who loves to travel. Someone who has photos in different locations, national parks, different countries. It means their culture. They like to get out there and explore. I love to do that. So it was, Brian, I know you love to like work out and CrossFit. So when you see something like that, it's like, oh, a similar passion. They're into something I'm into. That's great. I do want to see the occasional friends and or family in some of these photos, not every photo. But it also says you have a social network and or you are still close to your family. And yeah, so like I mentioned, full body, and I just want smile, be happy. This is you presenting yourself. Don't look so miserable. You make me want to approach you and talk to you, right? So I'll end it right there. Jourie, I'm going to pass it on to you. I know that was a mouthful.
No, it's all good. You took a lot of my answers, and everybody, all of this resonates. Like I don't have a whole lot to add. I can relate to really a lot of this. Yeah, quality of photos, group pictures. So something else I would add is I've encountered a lot of or profiles before that are like only sunglasses. You don't even know what their eyes look like or what they look like in their smile. And I'm like,
True.
Don't know. Or a combination of sunglasses only and group pictures where no idea, no clue, no idea who you are. From these. And I really want to piggyback on the filters. I've seen a lot of women with like the dog ears filters or like the heart eyes or the heart cheeks, and so strange. Don't want to date a dog, like want to date a person for sure.
Yeah, that also makes me think that they're probably only going to want to get like your Snapchat handle and not actually your cell phone number. Like, can we Snapchat at night? And you're like, this is not what I'm looking for.
Those are the Tinder people.
Yeah,
those are the folks on Tinder for sure. And then back to like mirror selfies when they have a flash on, and then you see like how dirty their mirror is and how the dust and fingerprints. I'm like, this is not a clean person. It's not a good quality picture.
What about shirtless selfies? I got to get the answer from both of you on the shirtless selfies.
I mean, if it's a good shirtless selfie, I'm up for it.
I think one is fine, honestly.
One at the end, and it's fine. Like a swimsuit photo.
Yeah, or a lot of the time the ones that I'll see, it's like them traveling, so they're like swimming like in a lake with mountains behind it, or like some kind of camping thing or a CrossFit thing where I'm like, yeah, like you're doing a workout or doing something active, so it's more than just a mirror selfie. But yeah, I think as long as it's good and the rest of the pictures show personality, then
they
it's okay to just throw like one in there as like a glamour shot.
They have like 10,000 photos on their phone and they picked the shirtless one on purpose. And it's like, oh, I'm swimming in the, no, you picked it because you're shirtless. Like, come on.
Well, yeah.
It's also, I'm going to call women out. It's also like the women who post pictures with cleavage. It's like, you're doing that on purpose. All right. Let's just put that out there. I ain't mad. but you know you
Right.
did it on purpose.
And I think kind of going to like the general profiles, kind of like analyzing it, I find I'm in that headspace a lot when I'm on the apps, to where I always ask, like, what does this person think that this picture says about them? Either like, oh, like they put this just to show off their body, or, oh, they put this to show that they like going out and having a good time or going traveling. And to your point, Ryan, too, that's one of the biggest flags for me, I think, is when people think that like drinking is a personality trait. So we're like, I'm drinking a beer here, I'm drinking this there, or like, even if their whole profile is just one thing, then like, okay, you're not gaining any more information by looking at a third mirror selfie or a third above the shoulder picture, like making sure that every picture either like shows, I guess this kind of goes into advice of every picture shows a different part of your personality or gives more information to that potential partner. Because it really is like marketing. Like you're just marketing yourself to future people.
Got to have variety for sure. When a lot of times, like I feel even just like the very first picture, not good at all. And it's like, you have a camera roll of hundreds or thousands of pictures and you have this as your first one. This is your first impression on a dating app. It's like sometimes unbelievable what folks choose.
Yeah.
That's like, nope, instant swipe.
Well, and I was even going to say they have like 4 photos that are pretty much the same photo. That's another, I don't know if that's, like
a car selfie.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a
car selfies
account or something like that, but yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good list we're putting. The one I also want to add one more, which I've noticed. I never noticed back in the match days, but I've noticed in Hinge is having their Instagram handle. And I'm like, oh, is this how you're trying to get new followers? Is by putting your Instagram handle in your profile? Does anyone have their Instagram? And Jackie, do you have your Instagram?
I don't have mine, but I have the same thought when I see people's, or then like if I go to their Instagram and it's like private.
Yeah.
And so like I could see it being a benefit to be like, hey, I only get 6 pictures on this profile. If you really want to see what I'm really like here's my Instagram, and it's like public and you can look at it or whatever. But yeah, then when it's private and then you have like 4 people that you're friends with that follow them, that you also know they're single and probably just followed them from the apps, I'm like, just feels weird.
Yeah. It's really odd. Well, this is helpful too for folks. So I've kind of written down the list here. So don't use filters, have decent pictures and have a variety. Some that, again, showing off your personality. Try not to have sunglasses in there. Don't put your IG handle. Make sure you put your, if you have kids, but be honest. Like if you have kids, and the same thing with drinking, like if you drink, put that you drink. If you don't drink, put that, don't lie about that stuff. Because I think I could see the benefit maybe of why people do certain things like that, but if you're starting off with a lie, that's not going to go many places unless you're just there for a hookup, maybe, I guess. But
yeah,
I guess we want to test people.
Yeah, kind of on that note, that's one thing that I talk to my friends a lot about, even as we're deciding what should we put on our own profiles. And one thing that I'm finding more and more is, as we've talked about, all of us have amazing pictures, but I also don't think that you should put necessarily your 10 out of 10 pictures on your profile, which I don't know, maybe that's a controversial opinion, but I also feel like sometimes we can set ourselves up for failure going into a date, or accidentally catfishing someone. If you're oh, I think this is the best picture ever of me. And you never want anyone to be disappointed when they go on to a date, if that makes sense. Make sure it reflects you and your personality, but also I wear gym clothes 90% of the time. And so I'm not going to put the wedding bridesmaid dress picture and the one time I go out a month going out and this and that, because that's just not my personality, and that doesn't accurately reflect who I am. Yeah, I look great in those 5 pictures, but making sure it also represents who you are on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So don't try too hard.
Yeah.
Or over try.
Yeah, just make sure the content of the pictures reflects you, but definitely good quality, good lighting. Make sure they can see your face. It shows your personality, but your true personality, not a black tie event for every picture of yours, unless you work in an office where you wear a black tie every day.
Jackie, that comes to, I remember when I was browsing profiles, I would always look for the A's. There's a good group of A's I would look for personally. Authenticity was definitely one of them. So what you're basically saying is be just authentic.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are probably wondering what the other A's I was looking for is authenticity, athletic, adventurous, and ambitious. Might as well throw another one there. Animals. Somebody loves animals. I love animals. So yeah, all those A's were super important to me. If they hit those, and it's like, okay, now we're talking.
Did you have? I thought you had acrobatic on there before. Did you take
That's a very niche filter.
That's like the fine print A.
Never hurts. Never hurts.
All right, so
that's the A+.
Speaking of that, so let's put everyone on the spot. Someone's filling out a profile today. They're getting on Hinge, let's say. What is the one piece of advice you would give them to put in their profile? One, whether it's a prompt, whether it's how they would structure the picture, what's the best piece of advice you can give them? I can start if everyone needs a minute, or unless someone wants to go.
I'll go for it. I think it was gonna be a question I kind of posed to the group of, I feel like recently, since I've been on Hinge, there's been a lot more use of like the video prompts and even like the audio files, which I feel like they can really be hit or miss on how people use them. Like sometimes there's a lot of men singing on the audio prompts in various degrees of talents, which like you do you. It's a weird first impression, but I do like the videos. And I have a video in my profile that's kind of like a montage. It was like a TikTok trend thing. So it's like a montage of a bunch of different things in my life that I love doing. And so it's kind of a double whammy because you get like 10 in one. Plus, I think it's really powerful to see like just how someone moves, like their body language, rather than the static picture. So I would say if you have a good video that's either like funny or shows your personality, then definitely try to use the video prompts, because that's definitely my most responded to element of my profile. And I think it automatically makes you more human in their eyes, rather than just like more pictures and more dog ear filters. Yeah. How about you, Jourie?
I think an easy one that I look for that is just, kind of a softball is the animal pictures, going back to the A list. I think it's just such an easy and great way to start a conversation. That's usually what I go for, is like if I'm responding or sending somebody a chat, is if they have a dog or a cat. Well, I'm not a big cat person, full disclosure. That's usually like,
I knew
this
I
isn't
liked
going to
you.
work out. Yeah, this isn't going to work out, which could also be, a good thing to have, but definitely go for the dog girls, and always an easy way to start a conversation of like, what's your dog's name? How old are they? And then go on to share about my dog. And then the conversation kind of starts from there. So that's a little bit what I look for. And then prompts, I suppose, too. The one prompt I don't like, though, I'm really curious what others' opinions are. We can come back to this later if we want to still continue. But I don't really love the 2 truths and a lie. I don't want to guess. I just want to know, like, tell me what it is.
Yeah, I also do not like that prompt. I'm not a huge fan of it.
And
I never respond
it,
to it.
Never respond. I'm like, nope, don't want to do it. Just give me the dog pics.
Ryan, what about you? What's the one thing you'd encourage people to put on their profile if they're setting it up?
I'm gonna buck the trend here. I'm gonna give you 2. And I think one of them is it's a deeper level. It's much harder to do than it is to say, but it resonates, is when you have confidence in yourself and what you're looking for, it comes through. So it's basically setting up your profile for what you really want. You're putting out there what you want to get back, and don't set the profile up hoping it's what other people want to see. I think that's where we're going to run into dead ends and frustrations and problems. So it's almost like when you're sitting there filling out your profile, be true to yourself, be as honest to yourself as possible, and that's how you'll get your best matches and best results. Another thing that I mentioned as well is passions. passions is one of the most attractive thing to me, period. Whether you're my wife, whether you're my friend or my next door neighbor, when someone's passionate about something, you get into it. You want to know more about it. So list what you're passionate about, show pictures, talk about it, whether it's travel, nutrition, health, your job, whatever it is, because that is just opens the door for a conversation. So passions.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, and this goes, I think, Ryan, what you were saying a little bit, but it's also, why are you on the app? So and I'm wrong. The people hopefully that are listening to this and are continuing to listen as we got to this point, is they're actually trying to get on the apps and meet someone and have some real connection there. So this is not for the clowns that are, just on up or whatever. I say that because, like, what are if you're getting on there and you're really trying to meet someone, to your point, Ryan, it's like I remember my profile, like putting CrossFit stuff on there, putting some travel stuff. I don't travel a ton, but I'm traveling more. Like, I have the picture from Sedona, Ryan, out there. And, but that tells people, because if people don't like CrossFit or they want to judge that for whatever reason, great, it's not going to work out. Yeah. So like, I need to have those on there up front. I will say, I think the biggest thing for me is be very upfront with what you want. One of the things I got a lot of feedback on this, is I had a section in there that said green flags I look for. And because I want to tell people, this is the type of person I'm looking for. And I think I had in there like active lifestyle. I think I had in there, effective communication. I think I had independent in there. I had a handful of stuff in there. But like, if you don't feel you're those, that's cool. No big deal. But I think for me, I wanted to weed out a lot of those. I was fine with the rejection. I was fine with getting less likes, but I wanted more quality likes. But that was the approach I took. Instead of, I think, to Ryan, I think everyone's kind of said it, and you can set up your profile to get way more likes, but it may not end up being anything of value, just kind of a time waster. So I guess, yeah, if you're looking on, if you're like, hey, I just want to chat with people and feel like I'm doing something, sure, you can probably game your profile, but if that's not the point, then set it up that's authentic.
I want to say something to what you just said that I think might have gone missed by some people, is you put green flags, not red flags. Whereas like that is a positive tone. I can't tell you how many times I've been turned off by such a negative tone on these. Like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. You fuck boys and all, like, it's just negative and bitching. Like, I don't want this. I don't want. It is so negative to me. That's like, well, you're already jaded. So I want to go into this with somebody who's positive and like, yeah, I'm looking for this. I want this. Like, the green flags gives me such a great feeling when I see that compared to red flags. Right.
Well, and Ryan,
it feels more, you're like,
sorry, Jory. I was just to say, everyone I think on the call knows me. Like, I'm very positive and optimistic. And that's why I think, ultimately when I set it up, I said, this is how I am. So I want green flags. Everyone has red flags. Everyone has issues. Nobody's perfect, but I want the people that kind of line with my green flags. That's going to be more compatible to me. So sorry, Jory, you were going to say something.
No, all good. It makes me think of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? Like, I want to find somebody with the growth mindset. If anyone's familiar with Carol Dweck in her book, like, let's focus on the positives, and then what are those green flags? And are my green flags I'm looking for match? And maybe there's some commonalities, right, in those green flags. We have some common interests, common goals, aspirations, whatever that may be. Yeah.
And I will say, last point on Ryan to yours, it did kind of annoy me a lot. Like, folks that, listen, I didn't vote for Trump. I try not to be that political. Like, people that would put like, if you voted for Trump, don't message me, or, that's really harsh.
I've always said, like, even if we share the same, whether it's a political opinion or any opinion, but if someone's like that very strong, like, F off if you did this, or don't even bother talking to me, like, that's just such a closed mindset. They're like, even if I agree with you, I still don't want to talk to you about this. This is just already a charged scenario. That's no fun.
So let's say, someone set up their profile, they're feeling good about it, and they start getting, everyone can take it from either way. Either they like someone and they're going to write a message, or someone likes them and they're going to interact and maybe ask the first question. You could take it from either or both. What would you put in that first message to kind of get someone's attention? Jackie, let me start with you.
Ooh, man. I think to start it off, I think as a woman messaging a man, I think it's a lot easier to impress them on the first message, just because from my friends' experience that I've heard on, like, getting a very thoughtful, genuine first message that talks about multiple points on their profile does not happen as often, just given the shift in power in the dating apps as well, which is kind of a whole other conversation. But the things I always start with is just like, hey, like, oh my goodness, I love your energy, or I'll give them some type of like physical compliment, like, I love your smile. You seem like you have great energy. Maybe talk about 1 or 2 points on their profile. But then within the first message or two of messaging, I try to steer it off of actual content of what's in their profile into something a little bit deeper, just because I think that is my personality. I would love just have a whiskey drink, have deep conversations. And that's probably one of my green flags for people. Is I've been on several first dates where I don't even know what they do for work, but it's because we're talking about like their life ambitions, or how they got there, or like why their perspective on relationships is the way it is based on the role models they had as kids. And so having some of those deeper conversations where I'm like, wait, like, we're on our second date and I don't even know what you do for work, but that's a huge green flag for me, because in my life, I have a lot of different passion projects going on, being an artist, hosting a podcast myself. And so I like hearing about all the things you do to fill your time outside of your day job. Unless your day job is what you're super passionate about, then like, yes, please tell me about that. But yeah, talking to them about different things in their profile, but then trying to get it a little bit deeper, into some deeper questions, which I actually have a rolling list of them on my phone of like, oh, these are different question ideas to try to steer in.
Copy paste.
Jackie's
copying and pasting.
Not
Chat
copying.
GPT.
Chat GPT. What is a thoughtful question on dating app? But more like, okay, like there is I think, exhaustion that comes with the apps too. Like in terms of, which we can dive into also, of like, it is a lot of time, or can be. It can feel like you're putting energy into these conversations. And so it is kind of nice being like, oh, like I want to take this further, but I'm like drawing a blank on how to do that. Because there is naturally a lull in conversation sometimes, right? And you're like, I want to continue this, but like, how? And so then having some like ideas to spark is really helpful.
Let's get back to, I want to get back to that, Jackie. Ryan, what about you? What was like a message you like to share maybe, or one you like to receive? Either way.
I know it's funny. I have my first message to Kristen right here.
Oh my
the girl
goodness.
that I
Look at
married.
that paragraph. Look at that
Right?
paragraph.
It wasn't that bad. I will
No,
answer
that's a good
it.
thing.
I will
Now
answer.
they call this survivor bias, just because you happen to get married. Now that in the 99 other simulations, in multiple universes, this might not have happened. But
Dude, I was 0 for 1,000 from her. So, no, what I do like to hit on first, or before I read what I wrote her, is notice something in the profile. Notice something that catches your eye. Like I said, I love to travel. So Brian, if I saw your Sedona picture, I'd be like, Sedona, oh my God, that's incredible. Like, when did you go? What were some of your favorite hikes? Like, you got to hit on something that you see that resonates with you. And one thing I've learned, the older I got, is nobody, let's see here, what's the term? What's the phrase? It's like, nobody loves to talk about something more than like themselves, right? Like, so when you ask them a question about themselves, they get really excited because they want to talk about themselves and their stories.
Yeah.
I'll read real quick what I wrote to Kristen, and this actually worked clearly. Is I remember when I saw Kristen's profile a week after me and Brian had that dating episode, which is episode like 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that on my podcast. I ran into her profile and I looked and I read it, and a lot of it resonated with me so quickly. I was like, I remember when I messaged her, I was like, I really hope she responds. I'm sure you've all had a text, a message. You're kind of like, if I don't hear back, it's okay. But there's some people you reach out to, you're like, oh man, I really, really hope this one responds or something. I'm getting a good vibe from this one, right? And so I noticed that a lot of her traditions were similar to mine. Her passions were similar to mine. She has a husky, and I was like, oh, I got a husky. Like, there's a lot in there that I was like, oh, this is golden. So first thing I know, she was Italian. Well, I'm part Italian. So I said, buongiorno. I said, you had me at hikes, coffee, and breakfast. And then I see your dog is awesome. And then I see your favorite tradition is the Italian Christmas Eve dinner, which is mine as well. It's the best dinner of the year. I celebrate this every year with my family. Crazy that it's only a few months away. Favorite part of that meal? So I end it with a question. Knowing that she has to answer it.
That's a seasoned veteran.
Yeah.
A seasoned
You set it up. You teed yourself up for a wedding, I think.
Boom. I learned. Like I said, it was over 1,000.
Really nice.
I hit that
Got
one.
to go on a nice trip to Sedona because of that.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it though. Like, you start by a compliment, whether it's an observation or something in your profile, then tie it into something about you. Say like, this is a point of connection that's between us, but then putting it still back on her of a question that
it's a ping and pong. And so it has to go back and forth. And if it doesn't, your first date is going to suck. And let me just say, before I move to Jouries, I want to also say this too, is if you don't have the mindset, or you're jaded enough where you're kind of like just winging initial response or reaching out to somebody, then get off, step away, get off. You need to be positive and be cheerful and approach it like that. And if you're kind of like another one, then you probably need to step away. So that's just something to keep in mind. Be positive when you initiate with somebody. All right. So we're going to go to Jourie, and I want your answer.
Ryan, completely resonate with what you had to say. I think you teed it up perfectly on that structure of your message. I think it's important to, at least, I guess my style, I like to initially start the chat with an answer to the photo or one of the prompts, like just real easy, get going, get the conversation going. I don't write really long messages because I also have had a lot of times where you send that message and you don't get one back. So I'm not going to really put a lot of time and effort and stress into crafting the perfect message. So I keep it kind of simple and just, focus on a photo or one of the prompts, like I said. And I'm curious eventually what everyone else thinks, but I think post 2020, it's kind of weird on the dating apps. I feel like people have lost social skills almost a little bit, or like the ability to have conversations and like keep conversations going, right? There's it's a little awkward when you're like messaging somebody that's just new. You don't know anything about them really, except for what photos you see. And I guess in my experience, I've had a lot of moments where the conversation just ends, just fizzles out. They don't respond. I send I love to end with a question, right? Give them a reason to come back, something to answer. A lot of times that I've sent that and it's nothing. They either, unmatch or don't respond for weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, they're not interested. And I've even done the whole, like, let me just send one more message and see if they respond, with no luck. So I try to keep a little bit simple at the beginning, because it seems like folks don't know how to actually hold a conversation very well, which is interesting and kind of tough. I think it makes dating in 2023 a little bit challenging, and especially through the apps. But with that being said, I try to keep the chat portion of the dating app a little bit shorter. I want to get into the date. Like, if we both feel like we're attracted to each other's photos, maybe we exchange a couple days worth of messaging. Hopefully they respond. I try to just jump right in and be like, what's your ideal first date? What do you like to do for a first date? Should we get a coffee? Do you want to get a drink? Like, go for a walk? What does that look like? Do we take our dogs for a walk? Because she's a dog girl, right? And so that's I try to just jump in and just like take action almost in a way. And I don't want to have weeks or days long's worth of conversation back and forth, because it's likely to end. So strike while the iron is hot, almost in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that approach there. And it goes back to too, like, why are you on there? It's the opportunity that you're trying to create, because all of us are busy with whether it's full-time jobs or side projects or whatever it is. So the apps are an opportunity. We're fortunate to have them. They didn't have them 40 years ago. So how can we use them to our benefit? And I think the rejection piece is really important. It's knowing that you're going to get rejected, and rejected meaning not right to your face, but it might be someone ghosting you or not responding or whatever. Maybe they respond, but it's a very short and like not thought out. Like I've had people respond where like they don't ask a question back.
That's the worst.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
remember, why are you on there? What if you know this is we won't get into this on this episode, but I think just knowing who you are as a person, what you really want, who are you trying to match with, helps you, because like when I get those, I weed them out. Great. One less I have to worry about. I'm not going to go on a date with that person because we're not going to be compatible, most likely. Right. So I think knowing yourself a little bit, you can start getting a little bit more specific versus having 20 conversations going because you don't really know what you want. So if you don't know what you want, well, then you're going to be for everyone. And that's not a good thing either.
Brian, I got a question for you.
Sure.
But first I want to pose this. I think this is really good advice. I think you would agree, all three of you, is, everybody's busy. We don't know the cadence of people's lives. We're just starting to meet them. We're just starting to talk to them. What goes a long way, especially for me, is when you're like, hey, I'm going to be busy the next day or two. Just letting you know I'm going to be silent a little bit, but I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And when they do, then you're like, okay, now we're talking, because some people just disappear and they come, oh, hey, what's going on? Like 3 days later, like, hello, I was waiting for you. So if you're going to disappear or go away and you just say, hey, listen, work is swamped these next few days, I got to go out of town or something, that is huge. It goes a long
Green
way.
flag.
Yeah,
Easy green flag.
That's a huge green flag. I think especially just like hyper communication, being considerate of their time and what they're feeling at the beginning of the process. And I'll oftentimes do that, especially to your point, Jourie. I'm the same way of like, let's message for like a day or two, but like, let's get at least something on the calendar. Like the sooner the better, ideally, but like, hey, like what evenings or what afternoons do you have available? And so a lot of the time, if it is one of those situations, Ryan, trying to be like, hey, I'm going to be busy the next couple of weeks, but I'm super excited for us to get coffee on Thursday. I just want to make sure you don't take my delayed responses as me like being hesitant. And like that goes a long way of just like setting that expectation, and like is the bare minimum I feel like you can do to communicate with the potential future partner that you're having. And obviously like trying to manage your own expectations so you don't get like too disappointed and you want to go into the first dates like excited and thinking like this could be like my future long-term partner. So like how do I want to start off that communication and communication expectation with them? Because I would hope they would do the same thing for me too, rather than just like ghosting and then texting you like 30 minutes before the date and be like, are we still going out? Like, I don't know. I haven't heard from you in 4 days.
We've all been there. And what you
That's
said,
the worst.
what you said also, I want to tell people this too, is when you are excited, say you are excited. Because otherwise it's like, am I just another date on this person's list this week? But you're like, hey, I'm super excited to meet you. All of a sudden it's like, oh, this date just got a little more meaning. It's not just the same old, same old. This person's really excited. Brian, I know I was going to tee you up a minute ago. And feel free, Jourie and Jackie, to answer this too, is when do you personally try to get the conversation from an app to perhaps a phone or a FaceTime? Brian, you go.
So I've actually, because I was catfished, so I changed my tune up. So I actually this is the last few months, but I stopped giving out my number until after a first date. Now I didn't have many of those up. I didn't go on a lot of those dates, but what I'm saying is that I kind of, and this goes back to boundaries, making sure you have boundaries of like what you're doing. So Ryan, I'm going to go on a side road to answer your question, is to, like Jourie mentioned, like early on, like a couple messages back and forth. I'm not waiting more than 2 or 3 days before I'm going to ask to go on a date. And typically for me, again, working professional, single dad, I do work remote. So I'm going, my first date is a coffee or a lunch. That's for me. And the reason I stress this is it might not be for everyone, but the person that I'm probably going to match with is they probably have a busy schedule as well. So coffee may work out or lunch may work out. Putting 3, 4, 5 hours on a dinner, someone you've never met, is tough, right? The first time, because you don't want to get 30 minutes in and it's a dud. And it's I think it's a respect level, because I've heard it on the other side. Oh, if you go to coffee, that means you're cheap or you don't want a big. No, I want us to be like, hey, are you in it? You think this is cool? Yeah, I like you. Okay, cool. I like you too. Hey, let's do a bigger thing on the next date. But like, it's almost that first stopgap of like, should we do this or not? Because I've had several first dates that haven't gone past the coffee. I could only imagine if I was with that person for 4 hours. Oh my God, I pulled my hair out. So that's my rule that I put into place. So Ryan, kind of going back to your thoughts there, like I'll set up the date early and often, meaning within the first couple of days of like, hey, this is cool. This is working out. Hey, would you want to grab a coffee? And then go from there. And then after the first date, if it like moved on, then you give the cell number. I used to give the cell number before. Haven't done that. But I don't know if Jackie or Jory, you guys are the same way.
It's fair.
I've done the coffee dates a few times, and I like the liquid courage a little bit. I like to go out for a beer, stop at a brewery. Still can be short, but man, like the coffee dates have, I guess in my experience, have sometimes fallen a little flat, a little boring, a little dull. Like, I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm going to go with like the brewery or the drink and kind of get one, lighten it up a little bit. Like we're both probably nervous. We're a little like, what are we doing? Like this is a stranger and I have no idea what I'm doing here. So I think I'm more in the camp of just give me a nice beer and we'll chat a little bit, and then I can still get away really quick if I have to.
Yeah, I definitely
Jackie,
am
what do you think?
similar. Yeah, I'm similar. I've done a couple of coffee dates, and the biggest rule that I kind of set myself, I like to have first dates that are in the middle of the week. Just because like my weekends are normally like blocked off for like time in my art studio, time with my friends, or there is that kind of maybe assumed, oh, well, this could just turn into an all day thing, which are great. But I feel like that's not really first date material. Like to your point, Brian, it's kind of nice to do a potential shorter first date. But yeah, Jory, I definitely like either like a beer or like a good bourbon bar. I love whiskey and bourbon.
Yeah.
And so I think that also just like sets the mood in terms of getting out of the day-to-day routine in a way. The few coffee dates that I went on, it was like in the afternoon, midweek. And I found that it was almost like we were both still in our like work mindsets, that it was hard to be super present. Or like the excitement of a first date went a little dull, if that makes sense. But if you're like, oh, I have like a dates night, even if it is just an hour, going to get a bourbon drink, it kind of sets that heightened element of it and like makes it a little more intimate just by an environment, has good lighting. And it really, those facilitate a lot better conversations. Yeah. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, it's funny hearing all these different opinions. I've gone back and forth in this multiple times, and I think over the years of frustration and just learning, what worked well for me is obviously you got to have the back and forth in the app. And then I try when I saw promise there, when I saw a connection and like the profile really hit what I was looking for, Brian, kind of unlike you almost, like I would give my number because I was like, I want a conversation to see if the conversation can vocally go back and forth. Because some people are great when you give them 10 minutes behind the keyboard to think of a response, but are we going to have the chemistry when we talk? And if that's the case, then it's like, okay, then now I know I really want to put the effort into asking you out to go have a date, because I've had dates where you meet for a coffee or whatever, and they don't know how to carry a conversation. It is so awkward. It's like, get me out of here now. Like, I want to be gone within like 2 minutes.
2 minutes, you
could have figured that out
right
on
in the
phone.
beginning.
You could have figured it out on the phone. So that is one thing that I learned. And then, so if the phone conversation goes well, that's where I might take an extra few minutes to plan somewhat of an activity. Like Brian, I'll hit on what we talked about a couple of years ago, Whereas Jory, I know you said like walks with the dogs, which I think is great. It's super funny, not to go back to our conversation a lot, Brian, a couple of years ago, how we recorded our episode. It was around September. And I told Brian, I said, hey man, if you're really digging the girl, you're feeling it, a good first date is like a pumpkin patch or something like that. Some activity. Go figure. Kristen asked me to go to a pumpkin patch for our first date a week after we posted that. She had no clue. We were on the same wavelength, but because we had messaged back and forth, we had a week of conversations on the phone. We both knew it was worth putting in the little extra effort for more of a special first date. I think you have to set yourself up to succeed if you're really feeling it. I think a coffee is kind of safe because if the conversation is good, it's not going to matter what you do. But if you really are feeling this person, you're like, hey, this person's genuinely different than anybody I've met in a long time, maybe go a little extra step to set yourself up for success, to be memorable and not be the same guy that's planning the same date as everybody else. I think that helps. But Brian, as you mentioned, you don't want to plan a 3, 4, 5 hour date. You don't want to spend $100, $200, $300 either and then not speak to that person again. So you want to be careful with that situation.
Well, and I think back to like Jackie, go ahead, jump in. I'll share phone back in.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I love that point of like setting yourself up for success with that, Ryan. And you can kind of tell, like, you can't fake excitement, I feel like, in the early stages. And you can tell if the other person's also enthusiastic and excited about it. There's always this couple of dates where you're like, okay, even if this is maybe not my forever person, I can tell we're gonna have a fun time when we're together. But I think also that is just the risk you take with dating apps. Like, you can put all these safeguards in place all you want, but inevitably I think that's also just part of the process, and not letting yourself get jaded by it. Like, there's gonna be times where there's someone that you're super, super excited about and you go on a date and it's just not there in person, or you have different long-term goals. And that's just larger part of dating, kind of like the risk we run in the world.
One thing, Brian, before I let you chime back in, one thing that I kind of always annoyed me personally was when, like, hey, Saturday, a lot of times I would plan for Saturdays because Jackie, as you said, like, work gets the best of you and you're just not really in that mindset to be excited. You're just tired and whatever. One thing that I hated was kind of like, oh, let's meet at 7. Let's go to a brewery and have a beer at 7. She's like, that sounds great. By the way, I have to go at 8 o'clock because I'm going to meet my friends downtown or something like that. Like, that annoyed the shit out of me because it was like, if we're having a really good conversation, you're out of there in like 60 minutes. And I hated that. I loved it. You know, the date is going well when you're just sitting there, time passes by. You're like, oh, by the way, I was going to go grab here. Do you want to go with me? And if it switches location and you're still there, to me, that's setting yourself up for success. Because if you're cutting it short, you're having a great time, then it's like, you know, it's just so disappointing. You don't want to leave a date like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add in the back end, I think everyone had some great points, but this is knowing what you want to do, what's best for you. Because for me, I mean, I think all of you know, like, I stopped drinking. Not that I won't have one, I guess, if I want. It's not like I'm religious or anything with it, but like, I've stopped drinking the last handful of months. And so for me, like, going out for a drink that's not for me, right? And I'm not going to do that. But also, I said, I work from home. I have some opportunity, maybe get a lunch or whatever. It works out for me. So I think everyone knowing what's best for them, this goes back to why are you getting on the apps? What are your boundaries? What are your green flags you're looking for? What works best for you? Don't do it just because someone else wants to do it. What are you comfortable with? You have to be open to that. So whether it's coffee or drink, or again, if you want to blow out a first date, great, do it. No one's saying not to, but no.
Yeah, that's where compatibility falls, right? Like, you want to meet somebody else that is into coffee or is into a drink or is into an activity, right? Like, that is kind of starting the foundation of what are our shared interests that we can then start here and then build upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to set yourself up for success if you know what success looks like. If you don't know what it looks like, you know, you might text someone for 2 straight weeks to not know, why don't I just ask them out? Because I think some people, I've noticed this, and you've texted for a while, it's kind of like, when's the right time to when's the right time to send that note to ask out, right? Because typically it's always on the guy in a heterosexual relationship, right? It's always on the guy to ask. But I think it's changed. The guard is changing. Jackie, is the guard changing?
I mean, I'm very direct in my dating style, so I have no shame in like sliding into someone's DMs or like asking them out. I'm like, I'm not here to waste time. Like, let's go.
That's kind of rare.
But I understand that is different. Be like, hey, I know a really cool bourbon bar. Like, do you want to meet here Thursday night? Or if there's another day works for you, let me know. But let's take this off.
That guy better say yes, Jackie. Is all I have to say.
But I think too.
But again, I think that it goes back to knowing what you want and just like having that confidence to communicate it, to where, to your point, Brian, like if I suggested, hey, let's go grab a whiskey drink, you're like, hey, whether you share that you don't drink or not right up away, like that's obviously up to you also. But then saying like, hey, actually, like coffee would actually be better for me. How does 4 o'clock sound? Yeah, great. Like now we have a plan. Like I just want to get things moving.
Yeah. Well, or that's an opportunity. Like I, might say, hey, that'd be great. Hey, just to let you know, I don't drink, but I'm happy to go there. It doesn't bother me to go there. I may just get, a mocktail or something like that. That's cool. And by the way, that is the type of like if someone reacted and were like, oh yeah, cool, no big deal. Like if someone was like turned off by that, again, probably not a fit, right? If that's going to turn you off, probably not the best person to spend your time with. So
yeah, it'd be like, better yet, let's go to this other bar because I heard they have amazing mocktails and they might have better selection.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome compatibility.
I gotta ask the question. I'm always curious to know what people's answers are to this. Brian, I'll start with you. We'll go around the horn here. Brian, Jackie, and Jourie, who pays for the first date and why?
I mean, I always, for not even just coffee. If we go on a second date, typically I'll pay as well. But it just, I don't know. It just, I'm a traditionalist,
Okay, Jackie, what
so
do
I
you
would
think?
pay. I would pay, or I'd try to pay at least if someone allowed it.
That's fair. Yeah, I always try to pay on the first date. If it's going really well and they offer to pay, then I'll typically say like, I'll let you pay this time if I can pay next time. Because then that's also like sharing with them that I want to spend.
Yep. That's what Kristen did
leading
for
on
me.
to a second date.
Yeah. And so that's my way of saying like, hey, and typically because if it's like a drink or coffee the first time, and then, I think it opens that door. But especially if I don't think that it is going to lead to a second date, I always pay my half. I think that's a polite thing to do. So how about you, Jourie?
Jourie, I actually want to know this from both perspectives, dating both sexes.
Yeah, I'll give you both. For sure. I am a feminist, and also I do love a man to pay on the first date. I think it's a nice gesture. And very much appreciated. I that's the camp I fall in. With women, I can't give like a blanket statement for non-straight dating, but in my experience, I typically split. We kind of split the bill, just put 2 cards down. No, it's just kind of easy. Let's just do an even split. It's worked pretty well. Or I mean, I've paid on the first date before as well if I'm really feeling it, or depending on the circumstance. But I think more recently, I try to maybe split on the first date or 2, and then we kind of go into kind of taking turns based on where we're at. But that's not a blanket statement for all non-heterosexual dating. That's just kind of my preference and the way I route.
And what I'll throw in there, and this is something actually I did, and I'll give credit to Tim Ferriss. I love Tim Ferriss and listened to him in his podcast for a lot of years. And something he said that was really interesting, and I've tried out and actually works well, because the awkwardness at the end sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Is you lead into the date. So this is, I think anyone going out, like let's say you're going to dinner, not coffee, because that's different, right? But going to where coffees you're going to pay at the beginning. But like, let's say dinner, you're going to dinner, is if you want to pay right at the beginning, say, hey, I would really like to take care of dinner tonight, if that's okay, and get their permission where they're like, no, that's fine. And now that's awkwardness is gone. That's awkwardness is gone off the table at the end. So if you lead with, hey, I would really love to take care of it, ask their permission. Because again, some people like Jourie or Jackie, you may want to split it, and that's more your camp, and that's cool too. But at least give someone the out to say, hey, I'd rather split it, or hey, I'd really appreciate that, thank you. And then you take the awkwardness out. So it's a different way most people do it, but it's something you might want to try. Jourie,
Yeah. Or
or
another thing, I think that like the date initiator could default as the payer, like whoever's asking the person out on the date. I think like that person could be considered the one that might put the card out first. I think that's kind of a nice gesture as well.
I tend to lead that way. I mean, being the guy, it was, obviously kind of traditional. Like I kind of assumed that I was paying for it most of the time. But like when you do online date and you're going out for a few dates a week or a weekend, it gets freaking expensive.
Yeah.
And not only that, like if you have 4, 5, 6 like dates in a row that are just subpar and you're like, I am tired of paying for this shit, honestly. What really went a long way, one, if you even just make the gesture, I don't even care if you don't have a wallet, but you're acting like you do. That's, to me, it's like, that's okay, that's kindness. And two, say thank you. Don't just be like, I assume you're paying anyways. I don't need to say thank you or appreciate that. Like there was definitely numerous times where it was just kind of like assumed and there was no thank you. And I don't care if it was a $3 small cup of coffee, the thank you is worth more than that. So always be appreciative when someone pays for you. So no matter you're a guy, girl, whoever, it goes a long way. So be appreciative.
I think a non-thank you could be a deal breaker, honestly, for me. Like that's something you notice and you remember. Like that's a small red flag potentially if that's a habit.
All right, so I know we're getting close to time here, and we can always do a part 2. This was fun. Let's go around the horn. Let's end on this, unless anyone else had anything they wanted to throw out. Are we cool? You want to end a final question?
I'm good.
Good. Okay.
That's it.
And this is a wide ranging question, so you can kind of choose your own adventure here. But it's simple. Someone's starting on the apps tomorrow. All right. Someone's starting tomorrow. You can pick anything. You can pick profile. You can pick, we've talked about messaging, anything you want. What would be one piece of advice that you think is the most valuable for them to consider getting on the apps? I'll let you all think for a few seconds. And then, Ryan, you're the elder statesman of the group. Why don't you start and give your answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think I may have already someone answered it. I'll just give the same advice, is be genuine and be authentic. I think you need to go into it with a positive attitude and high spirits, but don't set your expectations ridiculously high. Like, oh my God, I'm signing up for online dating. No question I'm going to find the one to be married within a few months. Like that's just probably not going to happen. You're going to set yourself up for failure. I think you need to remember that dating is supposed to be fun and you really got to make it fun. And when it becomes not fun is when you need to step back and take a look at yourself and then work on yourself and try to get positive again and focus on your passions. And I'll leave it on this, is when I was dating, online dating, and I was having a lot of frustrations, I did take some time away and focused on myself. That was the best time for me personally, because guess what? I became interesting. I traveled. I started a podcast. I had a great career. I had my dogs. I had my friends. I had my family. Like, I started to do things I was passionate about because I focused on myself. And so when I got into a date, I all of a sudden was the interesting person talking about, I've been here, I've traveled here, I've done this, I've hiked this, I can't wait to go here, I've got this trip booked. And it led to such a better conversation. And it was just like, I became interesting, more questions were thrown my way. It was just better than like, so what do you do? What's your job? What are you doing this weekend? Blah, blah, blah. So that's all. That's what I would say, is just be confident in who you are. And if you're not there yet, step back, don't do it. Work on yourself, be happy where you are, find your passions, be passionate about things, because that's going to come out real fast.
Tori, what about you?
Yeah, that resonates a ton and is just really matches a lot with what I think. I've gone through a long time of being single, and in that time I've really focused on like self-love. I think that's so important, is loving yourself first. You got to be the first person you love in your life, kind of thing. You know, you got to work on your own self-development. I have been in therapy for a few years and grew a lot there. I think folks really it's important for folks to really get in touch with themselves to self-develop, grow, kind of understand themselves. Big part for me was like understanding and learning about my attachment style. That way I could show up into a relationship and talk about my relationship style or my attachment style, and understand why I'm showing up the way that I am. And I think I think folks need to have time for themselves, right? Being single, being alone, to develop that self-love and understanding and growing into like, I don't need somebody. I'm going to be okay regardless of if I have a partner or not. At least that was kind of my journey. And then I think, once you get to that point, it kind of opens you up to possibilities, right? You know that you're going to be okay, and regardless of what happens, whether you get left on red or you date for a handful of months or however long it is, and then it, doesn't pan out or whatever it is. So I think a lot of times people jump into the apps when they're not over their ex. There's still something messy going on. They haven't been single for very long. They're rebounding. It's not a good situation. You don't want to do it. You don't want to put somebody else in that situation. And you don't want to be there either. So I think there's a really important step of all of this before getting on the apps. If you're looking for something long-term, if you're looking for a long-term partner, a marriage, years long, or whatever it is you're looking for that. I mean, of course, like we talked about earlier, there's moments that you're just looking for something casual and short or whatever it is, short and sweet, which might be a little bit different. But I think for these like longer term relationships, it's got to come back to some of those things I talked about. So Jackie, dying to know what you have to say.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I loved what you guys said. And I think it's interesting thinking back to when I was first on the apps for the first time, because I feel like it wasn't really that long ago. So I can kind of remember that mindset. And when I joined the apps, it was right after a 8-year relationship. Then I was single for several months, definitely did a lot of that internal work, figuring out like, who am I? What do I want? And bringing that mindset into the apps is super important. And I feel like the biggest hurdle of entry for me that I found that was helpful to tackle right away, which I feel like isn't as inspirational of a message as you, Brian and Jourie, is the logistics, and getting those down in my mind mentally what helped me go into dates a lot more confident. So things like having a list of places that I would want to take someone on a date, whether it's a list on your phone or if you're just walking out around, whether it's downtown or traveling, to say, oh, that's a restaurant I've never heard of before. That would be a cool date spot. And marking it in like the Google Maps filter on my phone of a list of like potential date spots. So just like getting those logistics down, I found was helpful, both from locations. My biggest advice would be go somewhere either you've always wanted to go before, try something you've always wanted to try, because then worst case scenario, even if it's not that great of a date, you got to try somewhere new or do something you wanted to do anyway. But then also don't necessarily take people to your go-to spots on a first date, I would say. Like, don't take them to your favorite bar that you go to every weekend, or your favorite coffee shop that you work from 4 days a week.
Yeah, very important.
Yes. Maybe wait till like the third or fourth date for that. So I think that is like logistically hard early on, because we are all creatures of habit. So you do have to like, what are other restaurants around here or other coffee shops, and making that like a fun part of the dating experience too, is one of the logistics. But also, and I'm sure both men and women deal with this, is like figuring out what outfits do you feel really confident in for dates. And especially when I first started dating, I had probably like 4 or 5 like go-to first date outfits. It was like one if it's like an athletic activity, one if I'm going to get drinks, one for this. And then, because for me, I think especially early on, and for people if they're just starting on the dating apps, that's like part of the whole anxiety of the date, right? Like, what am I going to wear? Am I going to feel confident? Am I going to do this? So like, whether investing in buying an outfit that you feel confident in, or just knowing that already can, like, I don't know, squish some of the anxiety of it and just let you be excited in the beginning, by having maybe like some of those outfits already picked out, or some of the location like options already figured out. 'Cause you can look at the menu beforehand and like you already know what you're going to order, so you're not like stressed on the date figuring out what you're going to order while also trying to like make a first impression with them. So if you have a little bit of anxiety of the whole process, I would say like do a little bit of the homework up front, which is not a very sexy answer, but you can go into the date a lot more confident. And I think that confidence helps a lot and makes the whole experience more exciting for both sides.
I'm Jackie, and I'm a planner.
And I'm a planner, you know?
You are a planner.
I like to be prepared.
I dig it. I dig it.
I love it. Yeah.
Good points. Yeah. I mean, I think as kind of to wrap this up, I mean, the fact, work on yourself, be prepared. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think maybe this is a good to kind of circle back on this, because Ryan, you had said, actually, I think everyone kind of touched on this a little bit in your answer, is the apps. That one thing, and I didn't really realize this early on, I think I more realized it this year, is the app is not the finish line. The app is the starting point. So if your goal is like, oh my God, I'm getting if I get on a first date, that's great. Well, then you're just going to be back on the app if you don't know how to communicate, if you don't have interesting things, if you don't have ambition, not ambition, everyone doesn't, I guess, have that. But, if you don't have aspirations, I guess that was the word I was looking for. If you don't have a vision for your life, if you don't have things that you believe in, you're going to be dull on the first date or second date, right? You'll be found out, and then you'll be back on the dating apps, and it's kind of going to be like that circle that's going to go round and round. So I think it's really important to understand, again, who you are, what your boundaries are, what you're looking for, and then try to act in the best light, how you would act or how you would hope people would act toward you, and vice versa. And then see what happens, because you're going to get rejected a lot. But that's part of the game, because it is partly a game, right? And you just have to know that it's not the finish line; it's just the starting. So go into it with that attitude, and whatever happens, happens.
I will say, pleasantly surprised by this conversation, that it was all pretty positive with great advice. I'm going to have you all back on to talk about the crazy stories that we all can relate to.
We didn't get to crazy stories.
We all have
some.
Part 2, crazy stories. All right, we'll
have
that.
Date's
Ryan,
gone wrong. Date's gone crazy.
Yeah.
We'll do that. If you guys want to do it, we'll set that up for fun.
Let's do it.
Ryan, thank you for co-hosting this.
Absolutely.
Jackie, thanks for joining. This was a lot of fun. And we will do part 2. Might as well. We'll share some stories. And that's why if anyone wants the real juice, we'll
oh, it's coming.
Give them the squeeze.
Yeah. All right. Thank you also for joining. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Great time.
Thank you.
See you guys.